Every year around this time, the debate comes up, how much decorating should we do for Christmas? And every year, I unfortunately have the same feeling that I don't really like to put a lot of effort into it because it just seems like a waste, because in not very long, we're gonna be having to pack everything up, put it all away. It's just a lot of work. This year, I'm surprising my wife. I ordered some Govee lights, permanent install lights, which solves that problem. This is perfect because I like the result. I just feel like it's a waste putting it up and taking it down. So having some permanent lights installed will resolve the problem once and for all. She's out of town. These things showed up yesterday. So I'm gonna start the process of getting these installed. And hopefully when she gets back, they'll be all set up and ready to go, and I can surprise her with them. I've already done a little bit of research. YouTube, of course, checking out other people's videos, and I kind of was able to gather enough info that I think I know what I'm in for here, but I decided I was gonna shoot a video on this. Number one, this is not sponsored. I paid for these. I bought the 150-foot string, 150 right there. It's not cheap. It cost me about $450. So this is not a small investment. So I'm really hoping that these things turn out to be reliable for a long time, because at $450 of my own money, I do not want to have issues with these. I want it to be a permanent thing that lasts for years. So researching it, these aren't the cheapest ones out there, but I also didn't want to cut corners and wind up with something that was inferior that wasn't going to wind up permanent. So I thought it seemed like the best option to go with these. There's lots of good reviews, lots of good feedback. Brightness is phenomenal on them. So it just seemed like the right choice for me and what I was trying to do. The next choice was, how long of a string do I need? And I believe they're split up into 16.4 foot strings. So if my math is right, I think there's 9 of them in here, equaling out to be just about exactly 150 feet. So, but I had to go out on the house and kind of look at it and see, where am I gonna run them? Is it even feasible to run them in those locations? And how many feet of string do I need to do that? So I've already done all of that, and now they've shown up. So we're gonna crack this thing open, see exactly what I got, and see if there's anything else I need. This video might not be finished today if it turns out there's something else I need. Hopefully there isn't. And I'm gonna cover the install process with maybe, hopefully this video is gonna be a little bit more all-inclusive video of everything from figuring out what I needed to the actual install. And we'll find out if I've got any tips or tricks throughout that process. But we're gonna start out by opening them up. Personally, I'm not really a fan of the unboxing videos because, you know, whatever, kind of a waste of time. So I've cut the tape here. I'm not gonna make this any longer than it needs to be, but you're gonna see right with me, what do we get in the box here? We've got a quick start guide. We've got a user manual. And then we've got some boxes here. Let's get these pulled out. All right, it looks like these are the strings. We've got some clips that screw down. We've got some additional 3M double-faced adhesive blocks here. Some more clips. Well, there's kind of 3 bundles here, and that would make sense if we've got 3 bundles in each thing here. That would be our 9 total strings. And then I would imagine that this is going to be the power supply and controller. And some extensions. So there is, now this is one of the things, I couldn't really find much data about it, but we've got some extensions here. I'm going to need them. I've got one gap that I need to span with these. I have no idea how long these are. That may be where I run into a problem. The first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to plug everything in and I guess see how it works, light it up, make sure it works, and then figure out how long these extensions are and if they're going to be long enough for the jump I need to make. I've got everything plugged in here, and I've even got these two extensions in line between the first couple strings and the rest of them, because I think that's about where they're going to need to be placed. I measured these out. They measured out tip to tip to be about 12 feet 4 inches, so I've got just under 25 feet of extension. That might get me where I need to go. So I'm hoping this isn't any more difficult than it needs to be, but I want to mention that the install is the thing that will make this good. You can buy the fanciest lights you want, you can buy the cheapest lights you want, but if you don't install them good and take your time and calculate things out and do it correctly, it's not going to turn out nearly as good as it could be. So you could do this with some cheap lights and have the results phenomenal, or you could do this with some pretty expensive lights and have not very good results if you don't spend the time to do it right on the install end. So I'm going to do my best to do it right on the install end. Hindsight's 20/20. You're along for the ride with me on this. This is the first time I'm doing this. So there may be something that I look back at and wish I would have done differently, but hopefully I'll avoid those things. There's no reason that this shouldn't work, because so far I've done no modifications and I see it cycling through everything, and these things are bright. I haven't loaded the app or anything yet, so I've got no control over these yet, but it's looking good so far. Very vibrant colors as you'd expect out of LEDs. And yeah, it's fairly light in here and it's still kind of blinding. So I think this is going to look pretty awesome at night on the house. This video is not sponsored. I bought these with my own money. I am a regular guy who just wants to put some permanent lights on his house, and I'm hoping to make a video to streamline the process for you as well. So hopefully I run into some bumps in the road that can smooth that out for you when you go to do the same thing. I do have a link down in the description. I am an Amazon affiliate, so if you click on that link, you won't pay anything more, but I'll get a small commission on the purchase. So please consider doing that if you are interested in buying these lights. I'm going to walk you around what my plan is, and I don't know if this is a realistic plan or not, but it's the plan nonetheless, not having done this before. I'm going to start out back here, and we're going to head down the soffit and cut over. What I don't know is if I can wrap around this and have it look seamless, or if I need to add a little extension in because maybe we'll wind up with a light in a weird spot or something like that. Then we're going to cruise up to the peak here, come back down. Now here's where my jump is going to be. I need to jump to this over here and back down to the bottom. I don't know if I'm going to jump over here and run them around here. That seems like it makes sense, but I don't quite know yet. The other thing is I've thought about the peaks, and I need to plan my strings out so that I don't want to have one light. I want to have the two lights closest to the peak centered, but not one right in the peak. So I got to calculate that out as I do this. Then we're going to come around. When we come down here, we're going to loop around and head over by the front door. Now this is where I've given it some thought, because one thing I do know is that what makes these lights look good is not so much the light just coming off of them, but the light hitting the side of the house or the garage or whatever the case may be. And so what I've thought about is, do I want to come along here around the porch, which seems like it'd be easy, but then I'm going to be missing all that light spread on the siding. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it onto the porch, back to the house, and over. The distance is the same, but we'll get it lighting up the siding through there. And then we're going to come around back to the outside here, and we're going to head back to the corner and across. Now here's another area. We've got this bay window area that kind of throws off the soffit a little bit, and I'm not exactly sure. I think I'm just going to try and tuck the lights in there. I think it's going to work. It might not be optimal, but that's kind of what we have to work with, so I'm just going to deal with it and see how it goes. The other thing to talk about is the install process, and I've got an extension ladder I'm going to be using. I don't know that I'm going to capture a ton of the actual install on camera, but obviously make sure that you are doing this safely in whatever method you choose. I'm comfortable on ladders. I've been on ladders a lot. So that's not gonna be a big deal. But whether you were doing, temporary lights or permanent ones, safety is always first. You don't wanna hurt yourself doing this. If you need to go rent a man lift, go rent a man lift. In this case, I'm not doing anything too crazy. And in fact, I think I can kind of cheat right along here because I can just stand along that section of roof and get the highest peak very easily. So that's gonna be my approach to the install. I'm up here on the roof above the garage, kind of getting things rolling, and my extension cables are long enough, and it looks like it's gonna be perfect because they're actually tucked behind this channel here. So you can't even see them. I was a little worried that the white might look a little unsightly. Not gonna be the case, it's gonna be completely hidden. You wanna make sure that you get the direction correct. My power supply is gonna be down on the end that plugs into this capped end. So you just wanna make sure that you have this going the right direction, that you don't find out later that you've wired it backwards. And then the other thing to mention, a couple things. First off, Govee says that the light should be 5 to 10 centimeters out from the siding, which is almost exactly 2 to 4 inches. So make sure you get that right. I'm kind of a dork, so I'm literally gonna measure and make sure I get them all spaced exactly right. Also, I'm gonna be using some rubbing alcohol to clean the spots where I'm gonna be sticking the lights. I think that's a very critical piece here. I do have the clips. I'm gonna use some of the clips and screws in a couple spots, but I'm mostly gonna be relying on this 3M adhesive. This stuff is awesome, but it won't stick to things that are dirty. In my case, I've got an aluminum soffit, so I think that's probably one of the best bases for it. So I'm just gonna make sure I clean it up good and get a good clean surface to stick those pads on. I've got this positioned hanging in the appropriate spot so I know which lights to mount here. I've cleaned the surface and then marked it. I did it in that order because I used a Sharpie and the rubbing alcohol will take the Sharpie right off. So I've marked both sides here, and now I can peel the backing off. And position this thing right where I want it. Here's the finished product from the peak down. So far, I'm very happy with how this is turning out. I used one of the screw-in holders right there, tucked it right into the siding, ran it all the way down. Up here, you can see I put one right at the peak there. And other than that, I'm just relying on the adhesive so far. There are a couple spots over here where we start to get in a seam. And I think I'm probably gonna add a couple clips, but I'm also really curious how this is gonna hold up if I didn't. So I'm a little undecided yet on that. I've made it all the way down to the end here, and what I've decided to do, I wasn't sure how I was gonna navigate this, what I've decided to do is just continue the string. We've got our last light up there, and then this is where this fits nicely. I've got a little clip there, same 2-inch gap there, and I'm gonna see what this looks like. And if I don't like it, I can cover this up. I've seen a couple different ways to approach this. One is that you can cut this and solder in or crimp in an extension that'll get you all the way around the bottom. I like the position of this. It's just gonna be right on the edge there. So that's one reason I'm not gonna mess with it, because that turns out really nice. But so one way is to extend it. Another way is to just simply cover this up with tape. And in this case, I would use a white tape, like a white vinyl tape or something. Don't really like the idea of that because I feel like that would help hold the heat in. That might not be good and whatever. And then you waste a light for no output. But we're just gonna leave it for now. And if I don't like the way it looks, I can cover it up or whatever. But for now, it's staying in there. My install is almost complete. I've got several hours into it here, but it mostly went good. I lucked out in a couple of cases. I've, of course, tried to plan out things well, but in a couple situations, it just is what it is. And one of them is, as I came around this way, and they are currently on, of course, it's light out, so they're not that bright, but where I lucked out is there's the end of the string, and I was able to drop the cable down, tuck it into siding. Don't look at my trim that desperately needs paint. And there it is, plugged into an outlet. Now, I think long term, I think I'm gonna have an outlet put in up on the soffit, so I can just plug it straight into that. But for the time being, it doesn't work out much better than that. There's extra cable even. I had more than enough. So that was one way that I kind of lucked out and things worked out good. Now I'm going to show you around the other side and show you probably my least favorite part. Over on this side, I did it just like I planned, but I don't love the way it looks right there because they're right on the edge, and actually the spacing is about the same. So I think the illumination should look very similar to all the other spots because it's about the same 2 inches off of the siding. But when you step away, you can just see those little pucks just kind of hanging out there. So that's probably my least favorite thing. Other than that, it worked out pretty well. Even the length worked out pretty well on this side because I wound up with just 3 extra LEDs going up the side there. I do actually have several outlets in the soffits, but I didn't have one in the right location to power this system, so that's why I'll probably just have another put in. I wound up cutting off all of these caps that were on the ends, except for one. Of course, we've only got one end on these things that is open or was open, and so I just used the cap on that. I cut all the rest of them off because it's just extra stuff we don't need hanging there. Now the last thing I need to do is I've got the extra cable hanging here, what's left over from those 2 extensions that got me between the 2 eaves, and I was kind of debating what to do with this, but I think in the end the most reasonable thing to do is just cut it out. So I'm going to cut a section of wire out and then just use some butt connectors and crimp the wires together, making sure that I do the same wire to the same wire and I don't mix anything up. And then we're going to shrink those down. They're weatherproof ones, and I think that'll button up the end here quite nicely. So what I'm using for that is, there's my 3 butt connectors, a crimper, my wire cutters over there, and then a torch to shrink them down. A heat gun would maybe be a little easier, less chance of melting them, but that's what I've got to work with today. I've got the extra wire all cut out. I measured everything out, figured out what I could remove and removed it, and then I just unscrewed the end that we're going to hook up to. I've stripped back the wires. Now, like I said, you want to make sure you hook these up in the right order, and it may be a little tough to see, but there is a marking on one side of the cable. So no marking there, marking there. So that just simply means that as long as we line them up with both marking sides going the same direction, we know that the cables are all lined up, the individual wires are lined up the same way that they came apart. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to crimp these lugs down here onto this end, and then I'm going to go up top, strip back the other side, and crimp it together. Here's the finished product. I got just the right amount of slack. I'm going to tuck them in a little bit more, but there they are, all crimped together, and then I put the torch to it to shrink down the heat shrink, and everything is sealed up nice and ready to go. So I'm going to tuck that back in. I'm going to turn everything on, make sure it works again, plug it back in, and then we're going to test it out tonight. Well, here we are. It's dark out and I'm ready to show these things off. So to load the app on my phone, I just had to scan the QR code and go through a couple basic steps. Really not hard. Whether you're techie or not, it shouldn't be a problem to get through and get the app loaded. And then you follow a couple basic instructions and it connects you to the system. So there's nothing too complicated there. And then you can get in here and you can, well, do whatever you want. So we're gonna hit the power button right away here, get these things fired up. But before I get any further, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna turn off my front lights here so that you get the full experience. I'm gonna show you a little bit on the app here. Basically, what I've mostly been doing here is just selecting scene, and then there's 4 different pages of scenes you can go through. And I found a couple that I really like. Basically, there's just a bunch of them in here, and you know, sooner or later you're gonna find one that stands out to you. Just poke around long enough, you'll find something cool. Some of them are a little bit more flashy, some of them are a little bit more subdued, but they all kind of have their little niche. This is one of my favorites. This is Rainbow, and I love the way it just scrolls through all the vibrant LED colors. And as you can see, it turned out awesome on the left corner of the house there, where I was a little bit concerned about the spacing because I'm right on the edge of the soffit. It worked out awesome, and you can't even tell. You can't tell there's any difference over there. So really happy with the visuals on it. Another thing to mention is it's actually been a couple days these have been up, and I've had no issues with the adhesive holding. Now, obviously, this is a very short interval to be rating them on, but check the description for any updates on that. We'll see long term if I have any problems, whether it be the adhesive or problems with the lights or anything like that. I will post any updates I have down in the description, so make sure you check that out for the most current update. Here's what it looks like over on this side. As you can see, I made it pretty far back in the garage, just like I showed you in the install part of this video, but it worked out really nice. So kind of from all angles across the front of our house, you get a lot of light. So this 150-foot string was perfect for my application. Here's a shot of what it looks like with these just thrown up in a general white light, just for accent lighting. Now I can go in and adjust the color of it from a little bit more yellow, a little softer, all the way to a very LED type white, a very pure white. But this is just a default setting that I just threw up just to give you an idea. So all in all, what do I think about these things? I'm pretty happy about them. The install, although a little bit time consuming, probably wasn't that much longer than if you had set up regular ones, and it's a one-time deal. Hopefully I don't have any trouble with these things and they just work. So happy with the install. I'm very excited to surprise my wife with these in another 2 nights when she comes home. I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to bring her out here and fire these things up at night. So hopefully she'll be as excited as I am about them. And yeah, overall, definitely happy with them. And it really is, I think that there's 2 things. The lights seem good, but the app really does make the deal. Having the ability to just run all these predetermined, pre-set up scenes at the push of a button is phenomenal. I don't want to have to spend a bunch of time trying to figure all this stuff out and create my own programs and whatever. I like just being able to hit a couple buttons and then, hey, this is cool, hey, this isn't, whatever. You can just pick whatever fits your mood and whatever fits the season. So I'm super happy about these. Again, check the description for any updates, or if you're interested in buying them, if you click on the link below. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this helpful for both the install and what the product offers. So we'll see you next time.